Hi, everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of Dare to be Fearless. I'm your host, Alexa Curtis. If you aren't familiar with me, I am a former Radio Disney host and serial entrepreneur, and my new company, Chief Swag Officer, is the #1 customized media company out there for bespoke items for media professionals like microphone covers and microphone flags. If you want to find out more about Chief Swag Officer, head to the show notes or chiefswagofficer.com, where you can get a discount for listening to the show with the code ChiefSwag10. Make sure to follow me on social media at Alexa_Curtis, as well as Dare to be Fearless, which is at Dare2 be Fearless. So my guest today is running exceptionally late, which is totally fine. So I have basically 30 minutes to do a solo episode, which is honestly good timing because I haven't done a solo episode in a little bit. I have a lot I wanted to talk about relating to confidence and building your own brand, how to cold pitch. I've talked about this over the years on this show and my platform, but I haven't necessarily talked about it so in depth. So I thought that this maybe would be a good chance to do that. So basically, first I'll give you like a little bit of a life update. I have been in London now for 18 months, and I have put in notice to leave the flat apartment, but it's a flat, that's what they call it here, and find somewhere else. I spent the past month or so in Connecticut, and I have to say that being there and then coming back here is like a night and day difference. My parents and where I'm from are from a super small town in eastern Connecticut. So usually when I go there, I only like to be there for 4 or 5 days at a time. But I randomly posted this video in December at my childhood home, like mall, they call it the Eastbrook Mall in Mansfield, Connecticut on TikTok, just talking about how bad the malls are in Connecticut. And this video somehow went viral. And so I ended up that whole week that I was in Connecticut posting so much stuff in Connecticut and really have amassed this super niche but really dedicated base of people in Connecticut who I've had the pleasure of meeting, a ton of people who have come up to me while I'm out and about, etc. And to be honest, it's so cool because I have been in social media and entrepreneur for so many years, but I've never really had this kind of acknowledgement for things that are so fun. I take my job and my career so seriously, and I think a lot of the time that sometimes hurt me from having more fun with what I do. And so when I've managed to build this Connecticut audience, I really realized that by being there, I've been able to explore so much more. I also realized that being with my parents, as much as, no one loves staying at home with their parents 24/7, I miss them. So I'm not leaving London for good, but I'm going to leave for a month and go back to the US. There's South by Southwest there, and then there's, I also have my apartment in LA, so I'm going to be there for a little bit and then come back to London when the weather honestly is a little bit nicer, because I got to tell you, living here, what people say about the rain, I mean, it's so true. It has got to be probably the worst place to live in the winter. And the first year that I was here, I was obsessed with it, and I'm still obsessed with it. But having been there and really dialed into this Connecticut community and then coming back here just feels a little bit isolating. That being said, one of the things that I love so much about London is I have honestly made my best group of girlfriends I think that I've ever had in this city. I've met them at events. I've met them at random places. And what's also super cool is being like an expat, an American in a place like London, is people are not so career-based here. So when you're in the US, and I feel like the #1 question I get asked is like, what do you do for a job? Or how much money do you make? Or, oh my God, you were like a Disney host. My friends here are not like that. They're all very traditional. The word, I guess, would be normal. And with my life being so not normal, having this group of friends that I actually feel like genuinely care so much about me and how I'm doing as a person, not as a business owner, is really cool. So my advice for anyone who does want to leave a small town and go to a big city, having been someone who left at 16, moved out, went to New York, went to Boston, then Austin, and now London, do it. But I think you also can do it in small steps. Through a lot of the community that I've built in Connecticut, I've noticed so many people have reached out to me about, how do I leave a small town? Do I do it? I don't want to have regrets. My biggest fear when I was younger was I never want to look back and regret anything. And I live fully by that mentality. So I think the way to go about leaving a small town that you're from and exploring a larger city is Think about it as if it's almost a vacation. Like, you don't need to move to New York City or Boston for the rest of your life. You can go for 3 months. You can go for 6 months. People forget that there's always a way to get out of a lease. I have gotten out of so many leases in my life. You can always get out of a lease. You can always get out of a job. There is nothing that is ever necessarily holding you down to anywhere unless you have a family and kids. So if you don't have that, and your excuse for not following your dreams or doing something crazy like I have with your life is you're too scared, my best piece of advice for you is to reframe your mindset to think of doing things in small doses of time. So again, you're not moving out for forever, but you're going to sign a 3-month lease or a 6-month lease. That's why there's a term out there called subleasing, because someone can always replace you. So that's kind of just my 2 cents on how to advise someone who wants to leave a small town to do it, but not get too freaked out to do it. One of the questions that I get asked a lot is about Disney and how I got that show, and also how I became so confident. And it's not something that I feel like I talk too often about, but for those people who see me now, the way that I am now is not anywhere near how I was when I was younger. If you knew me when I was 12 or 13, I was the most insecure person. I was scared of absolutely everything. This confidence that I have came through so many years of putting myself out there and being rejected. Whenever I email someone, I never think to myself, this person's going to reply and say no. I've always had the opposite mindset, and I think it's really prevented me from, it's enabled me to have this philosophy of do it because you don't know what's going to come back to you, instead of do it and then you may be rejected or it may scare you. You have to reframe your mindset to get in a place of when you cold email someone or cold call someone or reach out and ask someone for a piece of advice, they're going to reply. I saw something, I think earlier today or this week, where someone said, write so many emails that you don't even take the time to care if someone's going to reply to you. And quite frankly, that's what I do. I know people probably look at me at this point in my career, because I've been in this entrepreneur game for so long, and I had the Disney show as this experienced founder, and I am, but I can tell you I'm not a millionaire. Like, I don't have millions of social media followers. I have worked my ass off to get to this place, and it's because I have been so persistent with knocking down doors, with getting people on the phone. I'll tell you a really interesting story. So when I cold pitched Disney, I found a producer list with 466 producers online. I was living in Boston at the time. I was dating my now ex-boyfriend, who was like the general manager at a grocery store called Big Y, for anyone who's watching this. Or potentially him. I have no idea. Anyhow, and I was building my website. I was doing TV segments, and that's how I was really paying my bills. Anyhow, so I find this producer list, and I had actually done so many TV segments prior to this email that I sent. And the TV segments I were doing were also cold pitches. I would find a producer at Fox. I would find a producer at the Today Show on LinkedIn with an app I like called Snovio, or something called LinkedIn Lead Leaper. This started when I was probably 16 or 17, I think even younger. Like, I got first sponsored by British Airways with a cold pitch when I was 14. And it was because I literally found the email of the head PR person on Google. So my cold pitching and ability to start my journey of being a resilient business owner started at such a young age. So again, the version you're seeing at me now, think it started when I was 14, like building up to now being 27. So if you're watching this and you're like, I want to be like you, I'm telling you, it's going to take time, and it's worth the time. But it really is a matter of numbers and just getting into the game of dealing with that when you're reaching out to people and consistently introducing yourself to people. So anyhow, I had been doing a bunch of these TV segments, cold pitching them, etc. And so I was really getting myself exposure, but more so getting a lot of experience on camera. A lot of people who want to work in media or entertainment, want to be a content creator, they don't realize that being on camera is a totally different ballgame. Even as small as, like, people don't realize when you're on camera, you literally gain 15 pounds. And until you're in front of a camera all the time, you can deal with a lot of insecurities and body image things following that. But if you love that part of the job, then it's great. But if you don't love being on camera, you shouldn't do this for a living. But I learned from such a young age that something that I love to do is be on camera. So I had this variety of TV segments backing me. And so when I wrote this cold pitch to Disney, I actually sent it to like 500 people on one email. And all it said was, hi, like insert random person or whatever. I'm reaching out to introduce myself. I'm Alexa Curtis. I have a lot of experience in TV and media. I have some ideas. I think it said something really simple, like I have some ideas for shows and would love to see if any of it interests you. And at the time, I perhaps had a media kit, honestly, probably didn't even have a media kit. So all I think I sent was a morning show segment that I had done from the Today Show, where I was talking about social media and mental health for teens. Also cold pitched the Today Show, also followed up with them for 12 months. Like the way that I got myself on the Today Show was following up with them for 12 months. It's crazy. And a good, simple way to do that is you schedule your emails. I found this button that's phenomenal where you can pre-schedule your emails. Do it. If you send someone an email, the first thing you should do is set a follow-up email for 2 days later. But of course, keep an eye on if they happen to reply within that frame of time. But to be honest, with the numbers game, even if you set a follow-up email for 2 days later and forget, and they've gotten back to you before that 2 days, whatever. I give you the credit for having set the follow-up email because I'd rather have you look a little bit silly and send a follow-up even if they heard back from you. No one's thinking twice about things like that who are receiving the email. They'll be like, oh, this person didn't mean to follow up with me again. So that's what I would do. But anyway, so I send this cold email to Disney, and I remember a few days later, I got a reply from someone, and it's like a certified Disney official email, and it said, the VP at the time received your email and would love to set a meeting with you. And very fast, I just had a gut intuition that I needed to leave Boston and go to LA. All I got was a meeting with him. And I think the first few meetings were rescheduled. So I flew to LA. I subletted my apartment. Like I said, you can get out of any lease at any time. I listed my Boston place on Facebook Marketplace, packed up all of my stuff. Within, I think, 72 hours, was on a plane. Boyfriend completely out of mind, friends out of mind. I was on a plane to LA. And what ended up transpiring is that original meeting, I sat down with them and I was like an intro meeting. And the thing about business that people forget too is so much of it is just face-to-face meetings and then nothing comes of it. But what you get out of a face-to-face meeting is you're remembered. I like to do things and a technique that I found called, what do I call it? I'm completely blanking on the term for this. Let me think for a second. I can't remember, but I'll figure it out and put it down below. But I've coined this thing in my mind that's basically the introduction to myself email or message that I'll write to anyone. A lot of people shy away from cold emailing people and introducing themselves because they think, I don't have any reason to email this person. You always have a reason for someone to know who you are. Whether or not you want to follow something like I've done in my career and be in front of the camera and be a content creator, influencer, social media person, or whether you just want to be the top of your field as a lawyer, you should always be emailing people just to introduce yourself. And that's what I was doing with Disney. I didn't necessarily think I'm going to get a show out of this cold email. I just wanted Disney to know who I was because I didn't know if at one point in my life, Disney was going to need a fearless, self-made young entrepreneur to come on and host a show. That was really my intention behind my cold email to Disney. And because I cold emailed them and reached out to the VP, I ended up landing my entire own show on Radio Disney. And the whole process of actually getting the show was night and day difficult because essentially what happened is I got to LA. I had some meetings with them. I ended up getting scouted by a talent manager. At this time, I'm living in West Hollywood with like 3 roommates. It was a shit show. I'm paying like $700 a month in rent. I'm doing a bunch of odd jobs just to pay my bills. But every other week, I was able to have these meetings with Disney. And then I'm sitting in my living room in West Hollywood. And LA is a really difficult place to live, especially if you're new, especially if you're from the East Coast. It's just a very hard place to live. And so I'm also adjusting to living in this city, miles away from my parents. People are very different than they are in New York and Boston. So I get cold called essentially by a massive management agency that saw me and was interested in taking a meeting. And I was like, I would love to take a meeting with you, but more importantly, I've managed to get my foot in the door with Disney and I really need someone to back me up on these ideas that I have. And so over the weeks, we decided to start meeting with Disney, ended up having all of the team members brought in, and it was phenomenal. I mean, we're on the Disney law in LA, in Burbank. Every day I'm going into these meetings and, you're in that large. It's exactly what you see out of the movies. I mean, when I think back about my time at Disney, I'm so grateful that I presented myself with that opportunity. And then second of all, that they even allowed me into that family. But it's just the coolest things. And, you know, you get like the snacks and there was a Starbucks downstairs and like everyone in the building is famous or an executive. And I thrive in that kind of situation because I feel like a fish out of water. And for me to do the best, I find that I need to be a fish out of water sometimes. And so, anywho, the meeting started and whatever. I end up getting told yes to this show idea called Fearless Every Day with Alexa Curtis in, I think, September or October of like 2018, 2019. No, 2018, I get told yes. 3 months later, I get a phone call from my manager. And the process of this, I mean, we were negotiating back and forth for months on the contract, how much I was going to get paid. It's a beast. And so when you're signing with a Disney, you're signing with them not for the money. You're signing with them for the exposure. And so I knew that off the bat. Out of the blue, I get a phone call from my manager who says to me, I had a video series on YouTube that was like sex ed for teens. It was very PG stuff about sex ed. Disney saw these videos because they look up everything you do. No one had told me to take these down, absolutely nothing. So I get a manic phone call from my manager basically saying like, Disney has dropped you. They saw videos, you're talking about sex. And I remember I was in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I completely just fell to the ground. It was devastating. Long story short, Disney backed out of the deal. And Disney backed out of the deal they had given me by literally one email being like, unfortunately, we found videos about Alexa talking about sex ed for teens on her YouTube and therefore will not be pursuing this anymore. Like, we wish her the best of luck. Imagine being 18 from the middle of nowhere. You're thinking like you're getting your big break. You're not an actress. You're like completely self-made entrepreneur, which Disney is not necessarily saying yes to all the time. How did this happen? Over the course of about 8 months, I was a basket case, but I called and wrote to Disney every single day. And I didn't get one reply. My manager was reaching out to them. She basically was like, you're a lost cause. Like, she thought I was going to be like the next big thing. Of course, she's going to make a ton of money. 6 months, I was ghosted by them. Consistently was emailing them every day. The videos were taken down. They weren't bad videos, but again, the Disney brand, like, they can't have someone who's about to join as talent, like, talking about sex. But I wasn't talking about like my sex life. I was talking about sex ed, like sexual health for young people. So 6 months later, it's now like June. I was supposed to start filming in August. I think my career's over. I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I take a flight from, my sister at the time was living in Istanbul. I took a flight from Istanbul back to LA. I'm pretty broke. I'm living now with like 4 other roommates and a small dog at Park La Brea and losing my mind. Out of the blue, I'm in an Uber at 8 a.m. to meet someone my manager had introduced me to, who she thought was going to be able to help my career. And I just get a text from Eileen, who literally says, fuck yes, you got the show. It was just one of those moments in my life I'll never forget. And when I look back on that, and what ended up happening is, you know, she gets a phone call from Phil that like morning at 7 a.m., who is the VP, who was a great guy, who was like, so sorry, I've been really busy. Thank you for taking down the videos. Like, please tell her, sorry, we've been busy. We'd love to proceed with Fearless Every Day with Alexa Curtis. I was in an Uber and I just remember screaming. And I mean, that 6-month period for me, like, I almost lost my life. Like, I was on the brink of suicide. I mean, it was a terrible thing. I was so angry. I was so mad at myself also. But when I look back on that, and of course we end up going and filming and starting production for this show called Fearless Every Day that I got with Radio Disney in August. When I look back on the trajectory of that, if I hadn't gone through that, I don't know that I would have become as good and solid as a business owner as I am now, to where I feel like I can really get through anything. Because feeling like an opportunity was taken away for something that you did, but also that you're not getting an answer to, sums up the world of business. You are always going to have job opportunities taken away from you. You are always going to have job opportunities that you show up for and do your best for and think you're the most prepared for, and it goes to someone else. And the thing is, what people don't realize about the other side of the factor of business is you never know what's happening on the other side of the phone. You never know what's happening on the other side of the email. I tell people a lot who go out for job opportunities and then don't get that job, that they don't know if the job went to the VP's niece. You don't know if you didn't get that job because the person interviewing you thought you were a bitch. Like, you have to really simplify this stuff in your mind to get through it and keep going forward. If I hadn't followed up so many times with Disney and stayed on top of them for 6 months, I wasn't expect them to even give me the show. I would just wanted a response. I just wanted them to know that I was so sorry and that I had deleted the videos. That was all. I could not believe that they ended up saying yes to the show. But I think that in that period of time, being really ghosted and not hearing back and thinking it was my fault enabled me to now be able to sit here and tell people that the follow-up is critical. I like to follow up with emails within 48 hours if I don't hear back, and I always ask for a reason why I'm rejected. I'll give you an example. I cold pitch Aspen Dental, which is, if anyone's watching from Connecticut, which is this Connecticut-based dental company, whatever, and apparently they have a very bad rep because I went online, I was looking for a dentist, and the reviews are shit. Like, the reviews are so bad. And I can say this because if you look up the reviews, you're going to see, like, this dental place does not do well. So I cold pitched them. We basically are about to sign this big creator deal, which would have been really good money for me. And I thought it would have been fun content, etc. Out of the blue, the woman's like, oh, so sorry, we're not proceeding. I followed up 4 times with her, just being like, out of curiosity, can you give me a reason why? We were like about to sign a contract. I haven't heard back, unfortunately, and I may not hear back. But when that stuff happens, you just have to take a beat and just think this wasn't meant to be. Because a lot of times it's just not meant to be. It's the wrong time. I've also noticed that sometimes in business, when you get approval from something that you think is really awesome or exciting, sometimes the person who you're interacting with is actually not the person who makes the decisions. That's why, especially if you're a content creator or working in media, the people you need to get in touch with are marketing managers. It's great to email the CEO, but it's only great to, in my opinion, email a CEO if you're wanting to be mentored by them. If you want to get some really great exposure or job opportunities, the people you want to be reaching out to are like the marketing manager, the hiring manager. Reaching out to the CEO of a company, asking them for a job is just a waste of your time, because at the end of the day, the person who's choosing that role is not the person who is going to be hiring you. So you need to be cautious of that, but you need to be really resilient in your follow-up. Another factor for me that I think has enabled my confidence is, I think just because I've gone through so many things, I've become more confident in myself. But I like to do this thing that's kind of called like rejection therapy. Sometimes I make myself really uncomfortable and I do something that I know that's going to get me rejected because I feel like it really toughens me up, and it enables me in my business life to become a lot more hardcore. Whereas people shy away from rejection, I'm really fearless in my pursuit to be rejected, because it enables me to not only feel better when someone says yes to me, but it also enables me to feel like I am being rejected because I know it's not the right time, if that makes sense. Like, even if the one thing I won't do with rejection is I don't like to go out with someone who I know I don't vibe with off the bat. Like, I don't need that kind of rejection, but it's mostly like business rejection or something in that capacity that I like to do. And I like to call it rejection therapy. Even if you go up to someone at an airport and you say like, hey, can I take a picture of you? And they say no to you. Getting used to just hearing the word no is so, so awesome, because again, that's how you just feel more comfortable when you get the bigger no's in your life and you realize that something is always going to come after that. So I find that if you can get yourself to that point with rejection, that's really how you can become more confident. Let me see. Why does it say I'm rejected for some audiences? Okay, I need to turn this off. What else should I talk about? God, I feel like I'm not prepared for this episode because I wasn't expecting to do a solo. What are other things that people want to know? I'll give you some other career tips and pieces of advice that I've helped people with that have helped them get jobs or mentors. So a few websites that I use to find people's emails are something called Apollo, Snovio, and LinkedIn Lead Leaper. You can attach these as extensions to your browser, and whenever you go on LinkedIn, you can find someone's email that way. That's a great thing to do. And another thing I always suggest is if you want to start getting partnerships as a creator, make a really basic media kit. If you don't have any media or press to put in your media kit, 2 pieces of advice on this note. What you need to do is you need to find a brand who will give you product and then have the marketing person either write a testimonial or put some of those photos in there. The other day I got an email from a young woman. She's 22 and she was asking me for a job. And I was like happy to hire her because she sent me this media kit basically of all of her work and her experiences. And it was just phenomenal to see someone so young, because that's what I would do, put that in there. But over the years, she's obviously had tons of experience with brands and working with them. So if you haven't had that, you need to start somewhere. You cannot stand up to someone and say like, pay me when you have no experience with content creation. What you really need to do is you need to be getting brands to give you stuff, free stuff, and then make a media kit with great photos and put it in there. I always like to tell people too, photographers, quote unquote, normal people who are not creators, you can get stuff for free, but you always need to be offering something in return. Everyone should have a social media page. Everyone should have some form of a landing page or a website. And if you're really keen to start working with brands or get partnerships and you're either looking to become a content creator or you're just looking to like have a good time, always a way to go about it. Find the marketing manager, send a cold pitch. You'd also be surprised at how many marketing managers will even just send out complimentary items to people because they want people to write about it and talk about it, write a review. And so if you have a media kit, you can attach that to your email, or what I would do is just make a one sheet, and that's basically a photo about yourself, a bio on yourself, and send that along. I also advise people that they can send out media kits as resumes. If you're wanting to work in a creative field, the last thing someone who's on the other side of the email wants to see is a boring resume. Have a cool, engaging media kit. Have a portfolio. Have photos of yourself in there. I'm not saying have photos of you out at a bar in there, but like create a multi-page document to send to someone you want to work with that perhaps has people that has photos of you and past experience and testimonials from a boss, like telling you that's what hiring people want to see. And that's how you stand out in business. You don't stand out in business by following the normal trajectory. You don't stand out in business by not following up with people. If you haven't heard from a hiring manager, email them. If they don't reply to your email, call them. And if you don't hear back from a phone call or an email, what are you going to do? Not let it go. You're going to go on LinkedIn and you are going to find somebody else at the company. You are going to cold either message them on LinkedIn or send an email. And you're going to say to them, hey, Morgan, or hey, Bob, I was in touch with Stephanie and I haven't heard back from her and I would love some feedback on this opportunity. Any chance you can get back to me? Boom. I hate when people don't ask or just let the lead die cold because they haven't heard back. The person may have literally died and that's why you're not hearing back. And now you're the only one who's losing out, minus the fact that they're dead. Rest in peace to this potential hiring person. You're the only person who's losing out. You didn't take the steps to follow up. You expected them to reach out to you. Don't expect anyone in business to ever do anything for you. Unless you're trying to work for your family's business and they can have a little bit more respect. Business is cutthroat. There is a rotating wheel of potential people to get hired, potential people to get fired at any given time. The only way you're going to set yourself apart is with a unique way of emailing people, is with the cold email, and is with the follow-up. So I think my other guest is actually about to be here, which is very exciting. I hope this gave you a little bit of inspiration and advice for how to be fearless in the pursuit of being a business owner. I also recently launched a Patreon, so if you want to do any more or see any more exclusive content with me, plus more information on how to get involved with the Fearless community in Connecticut, giveaways every week, etc., please head to the show notes and I will link it there. And I will see you guys back next week for a new episode of Dare to be Fearless.